Penske Media is another one of those companies that I've been covering forever. But it's a fascinating combination of brands, and that's one of the things that we wanted to drill into here is the ways in which it organizes its brands, because they are vast. I mean, we really are seeing, just especially in recent years, we've seen Penske have what I would consider a very ambitious and diversified strategy of acquisitions. It includes everything from WWD to Dick Clark Productions, from She Media to Art News. This is quite a collection, and I really want to understand a little better about how they're organizing themselves and organizing their business and how this makes business sense. So we have Brian Levine, who is the VP of Revenue and Operations at Penske. He's been with Penske for 9 years. 9 years. And he previously, you had a wild range of experiences. You were at OpenX, you were at Experian, and then you were also at MySpace for a while. So that's quite a range of experiences. But let's start by talking about Penske and just give us a sense. And here's, you can see that up here, if we can show the slide up here. Of an outline of the Penske Media brands. Just sort of walk us through some of the key brands here and just sort of outline what you've got, the brands that you have and the channels that you're operating in.
Yeah, and I actually, personally forgot about a couple of these, so it's good to see on. It's a lot. But yeah, so I've been here 9 years. When I started, I think we were 5 or 6 brands. It was right on the tail end of the Variety acquisition. And then it's grown to what we see here that I'm not going to count. But I think, overarching themes in our M&A strategy is we look for, one, quality of content, quality of the brand. We like heritage brands with legacy. We like brands that are, I guess, best in class in their respective verticals or their respective audiences and or complement existing brands within our portfolio. So I wouldn't say it's not a quick scale play. Scale will come with time. We like brands that fit the portfolio, that fit the overarching view, long-term vision of our CEO and down. We want to be stewards of these brands for the next 10, 20, 50 years.
I want to get at that vision because at times it looks like Jay's just on a buying spree. But let's take it from the top down, and that is the basic business structure. Tell us what your revenue looks like in terms of how it's broken down from advertising to sub to e-comm to events.
So ad revenue is the biggest. I'd say digital ad revenue is probably 50% of the total portfolio. Print and live event revenue and sponsorships make up probably, I'd say, 25%. And then the other 25% is subscriptions, e-commerce, product licensing, IP licensing, kind of everything else that falls into that.
Okay. How does this all make sense? What is the organizing principle to this? Dick Clark Productions, WWD. I mean, I'm seeing things all over the map here in terms of both where the channels are and where the brands are. Is there a vision here? Is there an organizing principle, and what is it?
There is, for most of it. I mean, a lot of these brands, they complement one another. So, South by Southwest is a perfect example. It's not a digital entity. It's obviously live events, and we were lucky enough to get it when we did. But it's, they are a heritage legacy brand that is very good at what they do. Yes, they are primarily, TV, music, entertainment vertical, but they also do panels in fashion and the cannabis industry and automotive and just everything. So with that, it's able to complement the rest of our portfolio. A lot of our brands can have activations within South by Southwest. Same with Life is Beautiful, same with American Pavilion. Dick Clark Productions obviously translates well to most of our portfolio. So there is a very, I guess, smart complementary aspect and vision to everything that we do. Even with the smaller brands like Art News, Art in America, Art Forum, Rob Report, these are like the kings of the, I guess, luxury content world, luxury audience. They're not big, they're not by relative scale to Rolling Stone, say, but they are the best in class in what they do, and that's, I guess,
This is, rather than a scale play, this is a brand play.
Yeah.
This is a belief, this is a faith in the longevity of legacy brands, that you're going to be able to digitize these brands in ways that are going to actually make them live on into the next century, because many of them have lived for almost a century. So when you're looking at acquisitions, drill a little bit more into that, what the strategy is when you're looking at acquisitions. You're not just looking at big brands, but there are other criteria that you're bringing into play.
Yeah, and like I said, it's quality of the content, quality of the product itself. We obviously look for places where there is growth opportunity, more or less on the digital side. And we like to think there are places in all these brands to invest in the product, invest in the editorial strategy, invest in the tech, the SEO, to grow it over the next decade or 2 decades. I think the one thing to keep in mind too with our portfolio, what makes PMC successful, and we're certainly not the only ones doing this, but every brand here operates its own P&L. So we don't look at, like we were a portfolio of, I don't know how many brands, but we don't operate it as a single portfolio. So every brand here has their own editor-in-chief or equivalent, if it's a content brand. Every brand has their own CRO, president, publisher, or equivalent, so making all the business decisions. So I think it's an important aspect when we're looking at M&A, when we're looking at how to operate these things in the future, does it have longevity, like as a standalone?
Is it fair to say that you also look for weakness in the digital side? That you actually, it's better to have, this may be an interesting point, because compare and contrast this to Dotdash Meredith, who's had its issues having to meld together 2 fairly sophisticated and evolved digital brands. In your case, is it easier then to find a legacy brand that maybe is underdeveloped on the digital side so that you can come in and provide that piece more effectively?
Yeah, I think so. I think certainly brands that are distressed digitally is our core focus, things that we can expand on and grow. I think Variety is a perfect example. It was slightly before my time, but Variety 10 years ago, the digital aspect of it was, I think the digital site was, less than 1 million uniques, 500,000 uniques. Now, it wasn't overnight, obviously, but now we're approaching 30 million uniques on Variety. So it's a perfect case. It takes time, but the investment in the editorial strategy from a digital perspective, the investment in the tech, the SEO, all the platforms that it's on, that it utilizes. So that is what we look for. So the things that can absolutely grow digitally, I guess that's our core competency.
We've seen a lot of conglomerates like this before, and still are, of seeing this sort of massive collection of brands. In the ways in which you were organizing it, how are you doing it differently from others? And what have you learned from maybe the mistakes of the past?
Yeah, so the way we organize it, like I said, is each brand operates its own P&L. So every brand has a siloed sales and marketing team. So they each have revenue targets. If there's cost reductions that need to be made, they're responsible for their own. So the brand has to be successful on its own as a standalone. We like brands that are not necessarily good at one thing. You got to be great, or you got to be good at several things. So print, event, digital, e-commerce, branded content, licensing. So I think that's how we organize. That's how each brand is able to be successful.
Why is that important on the business side? I mean, it's important on, clearly, it's an obvious argument on the editorial side, but why individual P&Ls on the business side?
I think that's just, since PMC's been around, that's been the MO, that's how it's operated. I like to think that's how we've been as successful as we have. Having each having their own P&L makes them independent. It makes them be able to be successful at their core competency. They don't have to focus, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, they can focus on what they do best, which is entertainment trade dollars, and not necessarily have to worry about what's capable from a portfolio level and going after more non-endemic verticals.
So let's talk out of example. There are brands like Variety and Rolling Stone. They had digital plays. I mean, they made a lot of attempts at it because I covered them all. Give us, pick yourself. Which example sort of exemplifies the ways in which you were able to take a legacy brand and bring in your own digital platform to do things that they were never able to do before and supercharge it?
I think
and how this works.
Yeah, and I think it's the same for most of the brands. I mean, we'll stick with variety. I think digital was just never really their primary focus. I mean, obviously it's a legacy brand with events, the print side of things. You know, we took that in, we consolidated that. It used to be a daily print magazine, and we kind of redid that into a monthly and cut circ, but increased the quality of the product. You know, same thing with digital. We invest heavily in the platforms. Everything runs on core tech at PMC, so we invest heavily in our engineering stack, heavily in SEO, heavily in RevOps, programmatic, yield, and whatnot. But also the journalism. Like, you know, I think, or I'd say they really, most of these brands never really had digital editors or digital directors. So we bring in those roles who know what they're doing and how to grow the online site.
On the ad model side, though, what are you doing on the ad side for these brands? I know, and I sort of want to connect this back to Jonathan's piece, because I wonder if there's a counterpoint here that you can offer, because he really bashed programmatic pretty well, but you're fairly reliant on programmatic. So give us the counterpoint for why you're choosing this model and why it's working for you across all of these brands.
And I would say we're heavily reliant on programmatic. Some of the brands are. We absolutely use it. It's part of it's a big part of our revenue stream. The goal is to push more direct dollars, more PMP dollars. We do have a fair amount of OMP, open marketplace revenue flowing through, but it works. It works at scale. We do the programmatic yield aspect of our business does happen at a portfolio level. So we control the programmatic revenue on behalf of each brand. Each brand is responsible for their own direct and PMP revenue. But it works when you have scale, when you have a portfolio like this, you're kind of forced to be reliant on OMP, for better or for worse.
Well, how are you using it maybe differently from other publishers so you're not filling up and besmirching these marquee brands with the crapvertising that you're going to see in those platforms?
Yeah. So we have...
Sorry,
yeah.
Anybody who's representing.
We have pretty strict rules in place for, I would say, all of these brands. So just sticking with open marketplace, we set CPM floors per brand, almost per ad unit level to not let the crap ads in or limit it as much as we can. We set rules at the vertical or category level too. So in an attempt to respect the integrity of our brand and protect the direct sales and marketing aspect of these brands, we'll stick with Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, IndieWire, Gold Derby. These are all heavily in the obviously entertainment space. We block all entertainment OMP ads like as a vertical. There's a block on it, so you'll never see the ads. If you see a TV network, movie studio ad on those sites, it's always direct sold. We'll never let that in programmatically. Same with take Rob Report. We'll block luxury auto, luxury real estate, finance, things like that. So we have different rules, different caveats in place per brand to kind of to protect that direct revenue business.
But then how are you but another part of the programmatic play is that you're using programmatic to ladder up programmatic buyers into your direct buys. So if you're blocking them in those categories, how are you finding it?
Well, direct outreach at the brand level, certainly. We're agnostic how the buyer wants to transact. It could be direct or programmatic. But at the same time, we know, they have a large Rolodex of the buyers in the market. Those buyers know they can't access the sites through open. It has to come through the premium channels or premium CPM channels. And then, for the brands that we do allow in OMP, we have a programmatic sales team who's obviously focused on PMP and PG, and they try and, pick out certain buyers per brand and upsell them into PMP across the portfolio.
I want to talk about another part of the model that's maybe a little different from others, and I think is leaning forward into the future of e-commerce, is the ways in which you do e-commerce. And I think the Target deal that you guys have is a good example of the ways in which e-commerce is headed for a lot of publishers. Why don't you tell us about what the nature of that deal is, and the components?
Yeah, we talked about that at the roundtable yesterday. I don't know where they are, but Target is obviously one of the good use cases for a non-endemic advertiser across our portfolio. So we have certainly more flexibility with what we can offer, what's at our disposal, that doesn't interfere with any of the endemic nature of the brands. So a year and a half, 2 years ago, we went to Target to try and secure more of a soft commit on the programmatic side. We know they have dollars to spend. So they committed to X amount of programmatic spend, and in return, more as like added value at the time. We said, okay, we're going to focus a lot of our brands from an e-commerce perspective. We're going to add Target links. We're going to try and boost the affiliate sales on the Target side. That worked. It worked incredibly well for a good 12-month period. And then when it came time, when Target's fiscal year ended, came time for renewal, they increased their commit to us on a programmatic spend, but in return, they wanted now more of a guarantee. From an e-commerce side. So a guarantee of linking, a guarantee of order conversions for their end, which took some negotiation, took some flexibility on their end, but we did it, and now we're in, I don't know, month 3 of that renewal, and it's working well. So the dollars are increasing on both sides.
Okay. And then where are they appearing? I mean, how much of your inventory do you need to commit to this?
They appear everywhere. And we're fortunate we have inventory availability across the portfolio, so they could kind of target their own audience wherever they want. From the e-commerce side, from the editorial side, we are utilizing most of our brands in the music and entertainment space and lifestyle sites, where more of that programmatic spend is happening, so that those e-commerce brands and each brand's individual P&L can recognize more of that revenue.
How does this represent what you think may be the future of e-commerce relationships for publishers?
I think publishers need to start getting creative in what they can package and using everything at their disposal. I think the days of just like shoppable lists and hoping for conversion are gone. I think going after these big box retailers, or really anyone with CPG or DTC budgets, would probably like some of the out-of-the-box creativity like that.
What have you learned about making your content and your sites more effective in driving and making good on those guarantees? I mean,
That's tough.
What are like the key learnings here? Because this is, you've got guarantees now.
Yeah.
It's not just a matter of, happenstance. Whoever, hits a link, you're going to get a few pennies off of it.
Yeah.
Now you've really got to sell the stuff.
Yeah.
How does that change the ways in which you're positioning, or what you've learned about what it takes to use content to drive and make good on those?
We've learned it takes a lot of content, a lot of editorial resources to do it. And
Well, what do you mean by a lot of content? What does that mean?
Guaranteeing orders and guaranteeing conversions is not something to be taken lightly. It's almost impossible to do. And to be clear, the relationship with Target is more or less like a ratio of dollars to conversions. So we're not guaranteeing something on a monthly basis. It gets counted at the end of the month. But we have to get creative with the way editorial focuses their resources on whether it's a piece of branded content or just a list with 20 links in it and 20 items in it, whether they want to amplify the traffic on paid social or our various organic social channels. There's a lot that goes into it, and we want to, everyone wants to try and make it work because we know the dollars are going to, the brand dollars will come in on the other side and make everyone's P&L.
I want to pivot to another topic that also ties to some degree to the CTV panel, and that's live video, which you've been doing. That's always been a tough nut to crack for a lot of publishers. Live video, first of all, driving people for, and I think we heard already from a couple of brands who were surprised that actually they could make live video work. I think Deb mentioned that yesterday. But I'm curious about where you're using live video, what you've learned about driving people to it in an effective, scaled way, but also monetizing it in any reasonable way.
Yeah. Live video, live streaming is certainly new to us. We kicked it off probably last Q4. before the Dick Clark production acquisition. I think everyone knew it was coming or knew it was going to soon be finalized, so we wanted to start testing it soon. It's a product, PMC, we call it Harmony, so it's our live stream product that is functional across the entire digital portfolio and our YouTube channels and social channels. But you know, with Dick Clark Productions, it's really the catalyst for the Harmony product itself. Monetizing it is almost secondary, or at least monetizing the live stream. I think the main goal is to sell the licensing rights to a streamer or an OTT play. Okay. Our Harmony product, our live stream product, will provide that complementary scale across the portfolio. So no pre-roll ads, no mid-roll ads. You know, within each event, there might be some kind of sponsorship that will tie into the feed anyway. But the goal with Harmony, the goal with our live stream product is to bring that scale, where we have, you know, 125, 130 uniques that can really add value to the existing live events.
I want to open it up if you have any questions, Brian, about the Penske model. I see one back here. Keep your hand up.
And remember to say who you are, where you're from. Thanks.
Hey, Brian. Excuse me, how's it going? Jason Green from Fastener. Two questions. One, have you guys considered implementing AI for floor pricing? And then secondly, for just an operational editorial question, what percentage of your writers are 1099s, or not full-timers?
Second question, I don't know, to be honest. We don't get involved on the editorial side of things. I think most of them are full-time staff. But honestly, I can answer. Your first question, we are very much looking into AI and how it can help complement what we do from an operational perspective and yield optimization, especially. It's early stages. We have kind of an AI task force internally. They're tasked with basically looking at all the AI tools and how it can help us internally, all aspects of the business. So we're not shying away from it. I don't think we're fearful of it by any means, but it is something we're looking at, yeah, for sure.
And the AI question? You answered that. Anybody else? So I wanted to pull back. So we started by saying this is a brand play, not a scale play. But where does scale matter and not matter? I mean, you didn't introduce this and talk anything about scale, about overall audience at all. When I talk to you generally, that's not the Penske play. You know, Jonathan started by telling us he's the biggest publisher on the internet. Deb told us that one of the biggest video publishers on the internet. But that's not your play. Where does scale matter and where doesn't it matter here?
I think. Well, we do have scale. We don't like to necessarily tout it because again, the way we operate each on a brand basis. Scale matters certainly in our programmatic business, in our programmatic stack, to some degree, our e-commerce business. It matters when we have a very robust first-party data. It's called Atlas Data Studio. So we work with a CDP, we work with a DMP. We are collecting and managing our own proprietary data. We're fortunate to have the scale to be able to have enough audience data to segment it and target it to make it more valuable at a portfolio level or per brand level. So I think that's where scale absolutely matters from a data and a programmatic perspective. Where it doesn't matter is, like I've been saying, the way we operate the portfolio. Each brand is kind of siloed to do what it does and what it does best, and it works with what it has and doesn't really necessarily rely on a mass audience. It relies on its core audience to extract value out of.
Okay. I think I understand the strategy better now than I did before. But Brian, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.